Hello YouTube, it's Scott again. Today I'm going to be showing you how to get from a CT scan data, also known as DICOM, or that's the file type that's usually associated with CT scans, and we're going to try and create a 3D model like this. It's going to take a while to walk through this, but I mean, there's a bunch of different software we can use, but today I'm going to be using Osirix, so you can go ahead and download that if you haven't already. And so the goal today is this, and I'm gonna exit out of everything and try to walk through it all to show you how I got there. And this is the STL that we exported. So I'm gonna do a different vertebra than this. I think I'm gonna choose L3. Here's our CT data. Also, Wikipedia has a list of open software, so there's a bunch of these that are really good. ITK Snap I've used before. Both those. Osirix is good. 3D Slicer is good. None that are not open source is Mimics, but you can get a 30-day free trial if you're interested in buying it. It is pretty pricey, but if you're in a lab or something like that, you could talk them down with the price and whatnot. But they will give you a 30-day free trial. Really streamlined program. So but this is free as well, and I think you can do with all these you can do just about the same thing. It's just a matter of how many more steps it takes to get from point A to point B. Mimics is probably the quickest and easiest way to do things, but you know I had the 30-day trial and it was already over. But anyways, let's start with the CT data, and let's see if we can make something pretty neat. So this is the full CT set. Here, let me exit out of everything so we can start fresh. Alright. So, here. Sorry about that. Alright, so here's the CT data. First thing you're going to do is you're going to open it, and you have to specify what your range is. Intervals basically mean you're going to use one data type, and this basically tells your lower limit, because you don't want to look at the entire section. You only want to look at parts. So right now, we got the legs, we've got, you know, the, let's see, femur, ilium, sacrum, and there's our first, or L5 vertebrae. So I want to get all the vertebrae, so you usually go down a little bit further than you need to, just to be safe. And at the top end, you want to cut off all the junk that you don't need. So there's the head, obviously. You need the shoulders, arms, and whatnot, the thoracic area. Let's get pretty close. Let's see. Okay, so this is the sacrum, 5. I'll skip about 3 or 4. It's not that big of a deal at this point. Click OK. This basically says you can't use it for diagnostic or medical purposes, which we're not, so I agree. Alright, so I'm just scrolling through the images right now, and you can see we got quite a few vertebrae. There's the sacrum. Okay, so actually let's see if we can do L5 today. Anyways, walking you through Osirix. Some of these, there's a lot of things you can do. One of the important things with any of these segmentation softwares is to threshold, which basically means that you're only going to highlight or you're going to create a mask for certain Hounsfield units. As I said, Hounsfield units is basically the intensity. So you can make a window of, say, everything above 100 Hounsfield units, and it's going to be basically bone and metal. But to show you some of the possibilities of visualizing your data in Osirix, I like going to they have a bunch of plugins and whatnot. So here's a good way to visualize the data. You can scroll through any of the, let me get rid of this, sorry, any of these 3 planes, and it'll change corresponding to where you're going at. So as you notice, I scroll in here, they all change. So here's L5, L4, L3, here's the sacrum. So yeah, we're going to do L5 today. So I just want to show you that this is an easy way so you can kind of wrap your mind about where we're at in the body and how you kind of have to think in 3 planes all at once, but you get used to it. Another interesting thing and we'll definitely be playing with. Well, one thing first, I guess, if you want to use 2D viewer, you can use a bunch of regions of interest. There's a bunch of different ways of thresholding, of region growing that I just don't have time to go into today. But the thing that we're going to try today, first off, is 3D volume rendering. So this is, when I first saw it, I was really impressed with it. So this is the slice of the CTU that we have. So we're right at the umbilicus, and you can see the arms on the side and the plate in the back. Anyways, so this is just kind of a good rendering of the volume. But we can change with different values and presets what we're looking at. So let's change, I just went to 3D presets, and let's try low contrast, medium contrast. Anyways, so these are different windows, and you're just going to have to play around with them to see what works and whatnot. You can manually set them, different tables and whatnot. But this basically stripped away also, yeah, detail. You want high detail. So this gives a pretty good volume rendering of the bones that we're interested in. You can move around, kind of see how. The most difficult thing is the articulations in the back between the facets. And here's kind of your controls up here. So zoom, you zoom in a little bit. This guy gets you to pan around. And the one we're interested in is this one right here. So it's a little hard to tell, but this is part of it, and this is part of it. So we have to kind of cut away this part of the sacrum and this part of L4. It's not really clear, so you have to take some liberty in figuring out, well, if you've ever been in anatomy lab, you kind of have to figure out how these puzzles or pieces fit together like a puzzle, and then you kind of have to extrude out these areas. So anyways, the first tool I'm going to use is it's 3D sculpting. It looks like a scissors. So if you highlight an area, for instance, we don't want anything out over here. So I'm just going to go like this. Going to create a circle, release, and click delete on my keypad, and just applying the scissor. And voila. I'm going to pan around so you can kind of see it. But all that crap on the side that we didn't want to deal with is now out of the picture. So that's what I'm going to be doing for the next few minutes. So here we go. Delete. Alright, also you can use these little keys up here to help you orientate yourself. The other thing that you can do, since this is kind of a region of interest, is you can kind of do a reverse scissor. So this is an area that we like. So I'm going to highlight it and click enter. And so everything outside of that lasso is cut. So between delete and enter, you're going to be able to do basically all that you want as far as getting rid of excess stuff. So once again, this is L5. This is the sacrum. And so we just have to make sure when we're cutting up here that we don't get the top of the superior facet of L5. So I'm just going to keep on cutting. And it is tedious. There are more tedious ways of doing this, and there are more efficient ways of doing this, but this is a for sure way of getting what you want. And it's a good way starting off to kind of understand the geometry of what's going on. So this is why it's going to take this week kind of a longer video. So I want to make sure I try to be pretty conservative with my cuts so that I don't try to cut anything of the area of interest. So I'm going to just delete that. Oops. Yeah, you don't want that. You want this. This is much easier to rotate around. Alright, I'm going to get rid of some of this, looks like the ilium. Delete. Just making sure that our L5 isn't touched. Everything looks good so far. So the one thing that you'll notice is, okay, it's kind of hard to keep track of what is what vertebra. So you just kind of have to know the anatomy, but this body corresponds with this posterior process. You'll notice that it's kind of stuck together. Whether that's a ligament or not, it's kind of hard to tell, or how it's processed or visualized in this. But anyways, we need to cut off all of this up here. So, but you need to make sure that, here, let me zoom in. You'll notice, and this is the hard part, are the facets right here. You kind of have to think about which one belongs to L5, which one belongs to the sacrum, which one belongs to L4. So what it looks like to me, and this makes sense with anatomy, is that, so if you follow this body around through the pedicle, through the lamina, that this is part of L5, and this is part of L4. Likewise, down here, this is part of L5. This is part of the sacrum. So I'm going to just, let's see, I'm going to cut up here. Alright. I'm going to come back and get most of that again, but I just want to get rid of kind of these big chunks before I go in for the really detailed refining work. So yeah, I just want to make sure I didn't cut off anything I didn't want to cut off. Okay. There's a little bit of the body of L4 right here, so I'm going to just snip that. Delete. We're looking pretty good so far. Okay, so I'm going to try and cut this as anatomically correct as possible. And you're not going to be able to get 100% accuracy just based off of how this is. And that's okay. These are CT scans. They're not 100% accurate representations, but we're going to do some stuff in the post-processing to make everything look a little bit smoother. Alright. And I'm just looking at this area right now to see how smooth, see if we can smooth it down. You kind of have to have, oops. You can also click escape if it's not what you want with the scissor tool. You've kind of had to play with bones before to kind of understand what the proper shape of these should be. Alright, now I'm just trying to visualize the right side. From what I can tell, this is part of L5 and this is L4. I'm just making sure that makes sense. It's going to be a little tough to get in there, but I'm going to take this out for right now. It's just kind of in the way. Delete. Oops. I'm going to get this out of the way too. So, yep, this is kind of boring and tedious. You should plug in your headphones or get a cup of coffee and just go to town on this. Let's see. It's coming along though. Alright, what I'm going to try and do is separate the posterior spinous process of L5 from L4. So one easy way to do that, let's go to this orientation. These are nice, just kind of get you back in frame. So this is L5, this is L4. I don't really want this, so I'm going to cut it out. Get rid of all that stuff. Likewise, most of this stuff down here is garbage, but I don't want to get rid of all of it because the posterior facet's somewhere in here. But I can safely say that this should be garbage. Let me go around and make sure I didn't do something I wasn't supposed to. So far, so good. Alright. So let's look at... So the left side superior facet looks pretty good, but it's kind of hard to get the right angle. I'm just going to slowly eat away at this. So this is good, this is junk. Just take little bits at a time so you can visualize what's good and what's bad. So you don't want to come through here and take off part of the L5 vertebral body. So you can visualize a little bit more. All this stuff's garbage. All of this is good. So you just kind of have to whittle away at it. Also, this program is pretty forgiving with Control-Z to undo mistakes. So keep that in mind if you make a mistake, which I've made many. Garbage, good. Oops, wrong one. Okay, things are looking okay. I'm gonna get rid of some of this excess stuff down here. Look at some of these. Okay, so here's the front-on view. Just making sure I didn't clip anything that I wasn't supposed to. I'm gonna get rid of some of this garbage over here. So I'm just gonna keep on going on this. I'm not gonna edit the video just because I'm not good at editing videos, so sorry. You can fast forward or skip this part. Oops. I do not want that cut because I don't know what's back here. So I'm gonna cut that. Just keep on whittling away at the sacrum, making sure we don't screw up this facet. I'm gonna cut this chunk. Alright, here, let's cut this guy. Right here. Just keep on getting closer and closer to what we want. Don't worry about these islands, we'll fix them up at the end. So I think what I'm going to do is cut right. Make sure I don't get any of the body, but that looks pretty good. I'm going to leave maybe a little conservative right here. Just taking bites. Let's go back. Top-down view, it's kind of hard to visualize. change this. Let's see if we can get finer detail. Also, my computer's running a little slow. I need to change some settings. So if I'm reading this correctly, this is good, this is garbage. I just want to make sure before I cut. I'm just going to keep on whittling away, actually. But the problem, if you keep on whittling away, you kind of lose your bearing. It takes a while to get orientated sometimes. Just making sure I didn't cut anything I didn't want. Try to get a steep angle. Just cut this some more. So what I'm trying to do is cut this without cutting the vertebral body. Without cutting any of the good stuff. See, now it gets kind of hard figuring out where is good and where is bad when you have these cuts. This is all bad right here. Sorry, this video is going to take pretty long, but you get the idea. So I'm just going to keep on going along with this. Here, let's go back to orientations. Actually, let's go right here. Oops. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can get rid of that little line. So this should, let's see. Hopefully I got something there. There's a little thing. Oh, nope, I didn't get it. It's gonna be tough to get. This is what I'm worried about. It just seems like there's one single layer. It's hard to, there we go. It's hard to isolate it so there's nothing behind it. Alright. Getting parts of it. That looks pretty good. So, although this takes forever, it's a lot more accurate than some other methods that I've looked into. And it's also faster than some methods, if you could believe it. Let's cut this right here. As I said, the idea is not to get a perfect representation of the patient's vertebra, because it's going to be impossible, because the CT scan has only so much resolution. It's never going to be 100% perfect. So you want to get, we have a bunch of different algorithms we can use in the remeshing portion of this, which will be about 2 steps after this, which I'll show you. Oops, escape to do that. Which I'll show you. Let's see. I wish I could clean this up a little bit. That chunk right there needs to go. Anyways, if you have an undergraduate or an intern or somebody who's super eager, you can give them this project for whatever your model is. But the good thing is, if you just need one model, you just have to do this once and you're never have to do it again. Also with things like femurs or isolated bones, it's a lot easier. This is just a little bit more complicated because all these articulations are so close to each other. Whereas if you get like a femur, it's pretty easy to isolate using a bunch of different algorithms or thresholding methods. Here, I'm gonna try and pan over a little bit. I think I'm going to try and isolate the posterior spinal process now. So we're getting close to, just one vertebra. These posterior facets are going to be a little bit of a problem because if I try cutting them, I'll cut into the body. But that looks pretty good, actually. Let's try that. Make sure I didn't take out too much. Hopefully that wasn't too much. Okay, let's get rid of this junk right here. Being careful not to hit the spinous process. Ooh, I think I took off some of that right there, so I'm going to click Control-Z, and it's going to put everything back. So yeah, just got to make sure that if you do mess up, that you recognize it. But as I said, the Control-Z is extremely helpful. Alright, so we just keep on moving just a little bit and cutting a little bit, just so that we don't make any of those mistakes. I think I cut off too much that time too. Yep. Okay. Let's go a bit closer. Cut that. You can just double check. Maybe I was cutting something that was okay. Everything looks okay. I was getting some of this, but it was all ligamentous anyways. Let's get rid of this chunk right here. Got a little extra, but I think it's going to be okay. So we still got some lines of stuff. Here's a good view to clean it up. I took a little bit of that. Let's see. Yeah, I'm ready to do that. So in the L5-S1 joint, it's a little difficult because everything's starting to fuse together. Kind of how the T12-L1 joint's a little odd. This one's unique in its own way. Let's try to cut some of this. Not sure if I'll be super successful. Here, let's just take a few looks. Make sure we're not missing something that's glaring at us. So I think the top looks alright. It's okay. It's not perfect, but we'll clean up afterwards. There's a little bit right here that I'm trying to get. It's hard to see where it begins and ends. Let's see if I got it. I think I took out too much. Let's try that again. I don't think I can. Oh, there's just a little hair. Well, we can clean up the islands. In the meshing program that I use, or some of the algorithms, you can get rid of the smallest shells, which are kind of just islands basically, where they're not attached to anything else. And so that should get rid of itself in the meshing and processing. It might look messy now, but it's going to look a lot smoother a little bit. Let's see how that looks. These are a little rough. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about them. It might be irrelevant for the simulation I want to do in Abaqus because I'm looking at the L4, L5 joint, not really the L5, S1 joint. So from the get-go, I was kind of a little less worried about it down here than up here. Let me cut some of this off, though. That looks like garbage. Let's look from the left and the right. Doesn't look bad. Doesn't look bad. I kind of want to make it a little bit more symmetrical. Or, let's see. You know, I think I'm going to do one more cut, and we'll see how this turns out in the model, actually. Worst case, we have to come back and do it, but I think for rough estimations, this is okay. Main thing is up here, and the overall shape of the model. Down here, I know it's not nearly as good, but that's okay for what we want to do. But overall, it looks like a L5 to me. So what I'm going to do is save the scissor editing. Oh yeah, you should do it pretty frequently because you don't want it crashing and then you lose 30 minutes of work. So one thing we have to do is, if we go back here, we'll see, because of the 3D volume rendering, I'm just making sure I got that, okay. So 3D volume rendering applies, windows to this, but, our scissoring cut out all these little extras. So what I want to do is go back, oops, on the right one. So I've been mostly using the scissoring to delete, but what I'm going to do here is to ensure that the scissoring deletes everything outside of the lasso. So I'm going to just, it doesn't have to be too elaborate because we're going to clean up everything later and it doesn't have that much importance, but I just want to make sure that all the islands out in the middle of nowhere out here, oh shoot, oh, okay, we got it back. Can't multitask apparently. I want to make sure that all islands out here aren't going to interfere with what we're trying to do. So I'm just going to do the lasso again. Instead of hitting delete, oops, hand slipped. Instead of hitting delete, you click enter. That cuts everything outside of here. Okay, let's go to a different view. enter. Let's go to a side view. Let's pan over a little bit. Enter. Alright, that should look pretty good. Let's save this again. Okay, let's look at these. So you'll notice that things are cleaned up a lot better now. There aren't those weird streaks. Alright, so what we're going to do now is surface rendering. Actually, this is good for right now. This is the end of the video. I'll do another one talking about surface rendering and how we can get an STL file that we can export to different meshing software. So let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.